Hey guys, my name's Khadroth, and today I'm going to be talking to you about Nero Bride. But first, a bit of a PSA here on the class-specific summon that's going to be coming out here and should already be active. Again, do understand that the class-specific summon will not have pity on it if you guys do roll. So again, keep that in mind that it's probably not going to be the best banner to roll for you guys, like in terms of great quantities, of course. But certainly if you're a newer player, if you're really lacking in a certain class, it could be a nice, decent way of actually filling that niche a little bit and getting people into that class that you didn't already have. Again, the whole reason they're giving you guys class banners is something to do during the pre-campaign here for Akihabara, as well as giving you guys the opportunity to be able to roll out units to address that need prior to the tower event, which is going to use all of your units. So again, if you guys haven't checked out that, go check out my guide on Akihabara. I talk all about a tower event and what you guys can do to kind of best strategize for that. So let's actually get into the Nero Bride, it's a Nero Bride banner that we're going to be covering. But again, this is going to be a servant analysis for her. Nero Bride's been a really interesting unit over the years. She's kind of waxed and waned at certain points. A lot of people used to think that she was one of the best sabers in terms of damage, mostly because she was arts and easily able to be looped in some cases, and then similarly because her damage was actually up to par with a lot of the other units when just looking at it on spreadsheets and stuff like that. The sort of underlying issue with Nero Bride is Nero Bride for a long time was the only saber that actually had an NP interlude. And so the reason that she was actually trending even was because even though she was a more support oriented saber, she had that interlude, and that was actually allowing her to keep pace with everybody else. When other units started getting their NP interludes for the sabers, that's where they started to take off, and Nero Bride kind of got left behind in the damage department. But what you guys are going to see here is with the buff that she gets with Akihabara Explosion, she now has the capability of standing toe-to-toe again with a lot of those units. So it is a really, really nice one, but it is going to rely on her niche coming into play. Still, I think one of the biggest things that I can say about Nero Bride and why you should want to get her is that she is a pseudo support. She kind of can be a meta unit at certain moments, especially if you maybe don't want to use your Castoria or someone like that, and you maybe want to try getting away with another unit that's going to help NP gen and sort of facilitate that looping capability without necessarily being the unit you want to use. It doesn't mean that she has to be your backup though either. She can certainly be another solution to a problem or a great unit to use in a hybrid setup. So we're going to talk about that as we go through. Again, let's take a look right here. You guys can see her attack status at 11.6. That is fairly nice. It's certainly kind of like middle of the pack, not necessarily too low on the 5-star range. But again, a lot of how Nero Bride works is going to be her steroids and stuff like that. She does have some, but do understand that, remember, the attack stat is not everything in a unit's composition. Now, again, she is going to have 14k HP here. That is definitely on the beefier side, certainly not on the anemic side, but certainly not up in the like 15k that you see some SSRs at. So again, still decent, does make her at least somewhat able to take a hit. She is man attributed here. She has a star absorption of 102 and star gen of 10.1. Again, I'm a-okay with both of these for a saber. And then she has an NP gain rate of 0.7, and that is definitely nice, but you're going to see why here in a minute. She does have an NP charge defense of only 3%. That is your average for a lot of units. So when she gets hit, each hit against her is going to deal 3% charge to her. Not necessarily going to be crazy because we do have units out there that have 4 and 5%, but again, still, it is what it is. She is Chaotic Bride, so she does have a unique alignment in that sense. She's the only one that has the Bride alignment, and it is really nice in certain scenarios where maybe you have a trait-based gimmick that allows her to get outside of it, or maybe somebody has a anti-trait sort of move in their arsenal that you're fighting against, and all of a sudden, if she doesn't have that trait, she just doesn't get affected by it. So it can be a really, really nice thing to have her own unique alignment in that regard. She is female gendered. She is hominidae, servant, humanoid, riding, king, Roman, saber face, servant again. Oh, sorry, hominidae servant was the first one there. And then weak to Inima Elish. Now, looking at her deck here, again, I think the interesting thing is you're going to see, hey, we're a year 1 servant. And as a year 1 servant, yes, she has had some buffs. In fact, she's one of the few servants that have actually had her hit counts altered. If you guys actually check out the trivia on her, they did that to actually make it so that her attacks can spell out the word love. So it's a really, really interesting thing that they did that there. But certainly I'm a-okay with this because the arts and quick cards are the ones that now have average hit counts. The Buster card is only a single hit, but you don't care too much more about Star Gen and NP Gen with a Buster card too much. Instead, you're more focused on the damage of it, so that's perfectly fine. But again, she does at least have the 2 arts cards here, and having double Buster can certainly be a benefit to you, as you might be able to lead for more damage in some cases, or set up another unit if you're having to card. And Bride does, over time, especially with her steroids, card hard, and you'll see why here in a second. Again, the extra attack is just more par for the course. It is absolutely average in that regard, so certainly nothing too great there, but nothing bad either. Again, as we look at her active skills here, her first skill was increase one ally's NP generation rate for 3 turns of 45%. It's a really, really strong skill in its own right, but what happened is over time we saw Paracelsus get a buff that allowed him to have 50% targetable charge on one of his skills, and thus a lot of people began to say that Paracelsus was actually a better support option than Bride was. This was not totally true, but there were some factors at play here where if we were just talking about MP Gen, odds are it probably was in favor of Paracelsus as long as the unit was arts. But again, this skill does get an upgrade as a result of that, and this is currently out on all servers. It basically adds a 30% charge to the skill, so it is a targetable 45% NP gain and 30% charge skill. Really, really nice. Can function super well with synergy of like mana loading and stuff like that at the 20%, because that would get you 50% right there if you manage to have 20 and then the 30 from this. And then certainly, again, this is just useful in not only arts comps, but even quick comps if you just need a little bit more NP Gen to help you out. Sadly, I think over time we have started to see as charge is becoming a little bit more meta than NP Gen, and a lot of that has to do with odd structured nodes where we don't have sort of the basic 3-3x type of node setup anymore, where the first 2 waves are 3 enemies. So as a result of that, looping becomes a little bit weirder when we start getting to like 1 enemy waves, 2 enemy waves, and sort of stuff like that. So that's where charge becomes a little bit more powerful as opposed to NP Gen, but it just depends on kind of what you're facing and what the unit that you're trying to augment is capable of. Then we get to her second skill here, and this one hasn't had an upgrade, and you can see why. It is a phenomenal skill, has always been good. It's a targetable attack up for 3 turns of 40%. This is part of the reason why Nero Bride feels like she cards hard so much, because if you're putting this on her, she's getting 40% regardless of card types. That's going to help all of her carding and definitely going to be a nice thing for her. And then on top of that, she also gets the increase to critical star generation rate for 3 turns of 50%. This is going to help out the fact that she only has the single quick card, even though it does have decent hit counts. So really, really nice, but she can, again, remember, put this on other people. It's one of the great strengths of Nero Bride. Nero Bride can be your devoted damage dealer. Nero Bride can also be your support. And it just depends. So that flexibility is a really, really nice aspect to Nero Bride, and one of the reasons I really like her. If the run falls apart, but your Nero Bride's still alive, she can start transitioning into being your main DPS. Similarly, if you weren't feeling like she was able to cut it, you can target someone else with her skills, and they can get the job done. So really interesting that she has that sort of flexibility to adapt to any situation. Then we get to her third skill here, and this recovers one ally's HP by up to 3,000. It's only on a 5-turn cooldown. This is a strong heal regardless, but add in on top of that the ability to increase their defense by 20% for 3 turns, and this can definitely sort of bring someone back from the brink, able to make them take another hit, or maybe you're just trying to use it preemptively to kind of mitigate things. Definitely all things you can do, and it's one of the reasons I really like Bride, is because she is one of the few saber faces that has healing. Not that I would have any sort of bias in that regard, and certainly not like she saved any of my saber face only runs that I do. But again, this is a really, really nice thing to have. Having a decent heal on a low cooldown can be good, can absolutely keep you up if you're in a carding or more challenging situation. And then over time, this is the buff that I was talking about. She gets the upgrade here that's going to help her keep pace with a lot of people, as again, it adds in the ability to, on the target, give them damage against sky attribute for 3 turns of, again, up to 30%. So she gets a 30% power mod to sky attribute that she can use on herself, make herself do more damage, or on someone else to help them out as well. And one of the reasons I really like this and talked about it before was when this buff came out, or rather before it, a lot of people were wondering what they were going to do to revitalize Bride. Some people were saying Bride really needed something. I didn't think Bride needed a whole lot, but what I did say was, hey, if they were going to give Bride something, don't make her competitive with Castoria, because she's probably not going to win that battle. Instead, make her complementary. And that's what they did. They actually gave her a new niche that she could employ that makes her work with Castoria rather than trying to be some sort of replacement for Castoria. So again, you can operate her in a setup alongside a Castoria, just with like Bride, Castoria, and another damage dealer, or you maybe do double Castoria and then Bride on a plug suit, or maybe just double Castoria Bride with Bride being your damage dealer. Really interesting to see that, because again, Bride would function as a unit that has decent NP gen, but also has 30% charge in her kit. Still a really solid buff there in that regard. She gets magic resistance C for debuff resistance of 15%, definitely a sizable amount there. And then riding B for an additional boost to the singular quick card's performance. So definitely not bad, like I said, if you had that second skill on her for star gen. Then again, the first 2 appends are going to be pretty much what you expect. I already talked about the synergy here with mana loading and her 30% charge skill, so you definitely are going to want to go for that first. That being said here, the first skill, if you're in more of a solo environment or you're just a huge Nero fan, certainly the extra attack finesse can be useful, as it will allow you to get a little bit more out of Brave Chains, certainly more as we head towards Mighty Chains as well, because you will be able to get a little bit more oomph out of a Brave Mighty Chain because of that. And then the third skill here is the anti-assassin attack damage aptitude. This would probably only be useful if the assassin was also Sky. Even then, that would only be 30%, probably not worth actually just using a caster or crap, even a berserker over. So it's just really going to depend on what you're trying to do. But I would probably say the third skill is the least important out of these appends, as it normally is. Then we get to the Noble Phantasm. It is a 2-hit single target arts NP that deals damage to one enemy. It then inflicts burn for 5 turns to them and reduces their defense for 5 turns, as well as their critical attack chance for 5 turns. So her overcharge effect here, which is again the thing that happens when you put it later in a chain of NPs or have an overcharge buff, not the NP level. The overcharge effects here, there's quite a bit of them, and so that's kind of nice. Sadly, though, the defense down is nice, but it's after damage, so it's not going to apply before the NP goes out. And the burn is a little bit lackluster at only 500 damage. The crit chance down at 20% is actually pretty nice, especially against certain bosses. But yeah, there's certain aspects to her NP that could have gotten better, and you'll see we do have an NP interlude. Like I talked about, she was one of the first sabers to get it. So basically, she's had this for years now at this point. She's been one of the most buffed units because of that in the Saber category, just having had early buffs and then needing to keep pace later on. But you guys can see they upped the amount of damage, and then basically your NP2 became your NP1 here. So again, 1200 scaling now. And then she inflicts burn status, which got increased. So now it's a base of 1000, so it doubled it. Is this good? To me, it's still a little lackluster, but that's just the way dots work in this game. A lot of dots either take way too long to ramp up, or there's just not a whole lot of payoff. The good news is it is a 5-turn duration, so this is really good for setting up someone like, say, again, Yang, someone that deals more damage off of a burn. Or certainly if you wanted to throw something like Honey Lake on her in order to be able to get more damage out of it, you certainly could if you're managing to get another NP, or maybe you threw burn command codes on her to set her up, and this just sort of perpetuates the burn being on the unit. But again, something like Honey Lake can be really nice for her in that regard, because it affects all damage, not just the NP. So certainly if you're carding with her, you can get even more out of that too. So she'd be a really nice unit for synergy in that regard. But yeah, this is definitely a nice upgrade for her and something that did allow her to sort of, at least damage wise, keep pace with a lot of those sabers for years until they started getting their NP interludes. Now again, I do believe that Nero Bride is sort of on the cusp of being a sort of meta support. She's not a gotta have, but honestly, she was one of the last supports I got on my JP account, and I was really happy to get her, and I have used her quite a bit since getting her. I have not regretted pulling for Nero Bride and acquiring her. She has really been a nice sort of alternate support option when I really needed it for quick or arts comps. She could work in a buster system for you, just probably not going to be the best of choices since she only has the 30% charge. You're probably at that point, if you're trying to 3-turn, looking at like some sort of double Koyan Skya setup, or maybe double Oberon, but maybe you somehow have enough charge with the unit. So maybe you're looking at like a 50% charging unit. Even then, while you would be able to take advantage of the charge and the attack up, you wouldn't really be able to take advantage of the NP gain too much. So that would be your issue trying to use her in a buster system. Still, I think she's certainly a solid unit. I think she is definitely a unit you all should consider. And again, especially if you don't have some of those other meta supports. Maybe you're waiting for a banner for like Castoria or Tamamo or someone else like that to come around, maybe even Scotty. Your Bride might be able to sort of tide you over until you can get to them, or augment it once you do get them. Again, don't overlook her just because she might not be the most meta of units. She is still a really valuable, usable unit. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you think of Nero Bride below and if you're going to roll. I'll see you guys for the next video. Have a good one.